If the ownership of this house isn't transferred to me, I'm contemplating a divorce. I was taken aback when my husband suddenly dropped this bombshell. This house holds precious memories of our family, and I can't bear to part with it. Despite my emotional attachment, my husband is threatening me, toying with my feelings. Distraught, I reached out to my father for help. I am Emily, a 30-year-old full-time housewife, dedicating my days to supporting and managing our household. I married John 2 years ago, and since quitting my job after marriage, my husband has been the breadwinner. However, our peaceful life took a turn for the worse after my father-in-law's passing, leading to my mother-in-law moving into our apartment. Surprisingly, I was informed about my mother-in-law's move the day before she arrived. Nonchalantly, my husband announced her impending arrival as if it were the most natural thing. It caught me off guard, and I questioned the suddenness of it. I forgot to mention earlier that my mother would also be coming to live with us from tomorrow. As soon as my husband came home, he casually mentioned her arrival, asking me to prepare and clean up. I was bewildered by the news. I thought she was coming over for a visit, but my husband clarified that she was moving in. The decision was made without any prior discussion with me, and the very next day, my mother-in-law arrived with numerous luggages. It's been a while. I'm glad you look well, Mary. Please come in, I greeted her. However, she seemed displeased for some reason. As she entered, she questioned why I didn't come to pick her up, emphasizing that it's common sense to meet at the station, especially when you know your mother-in-law is arriving. While carrying the hefty luggages, I didn't know what time you'd arrive. In that case, shouldn't you have contacted me? You're so thoughtless. I apologize. This is why they say some daughter-in-laws are useless and inconsiderate. Grumbling, the mother-in-law settled heavily on the sofa. Despite being a guest in our home, she acted as if she owned the place. I couldn't believe it. From that day on, her snide comments became even more intense. As soon as my husband left for work, the barrage began. Emily, why are you sitting there? Do the dishes. You should have finished the laundry in the morning. That's common knowledge. I'm sorry, I'll do the laundry once the dishes are done. You have the wrong priorities. In my house, it's a rule to do laundry immediately after breakfast. But that rule is just to do as you're told. Haven't your parents taught you not to make excuses? I had my own daily routine, and it seemed that Mary couldn't understand that I wasn't refusing to do the work. Even if I did things her way, she would still find fault and complain every day. The daytime hours alone with her were especially challenging. One day, I had an epiphany on how to end this living hell with my mother-in-law. The plan was to move to the house I inherited from my father and live in a separate home from her. My father retired early a few months ago, and my parents started a new life in the countryside. They then passed on their house to me. Fortunately, that house isn't too far from our current apartment, and we were planning to move eventually. Living with my mother-in-law had reached my limits, so I decided to talk to my husband about moving sooner. John, can we talk for a moment? What's up? Anything happened? Remember the house my father gave us? What do you think about moving there? Oh, that house. We did talk about moving there someday. Why the sudden decision? Well, I've been having some difficulties with your mother. She never mentioned anything, but I can't bear living with her anymore. That's why I'm seriously considering moving. Observing that the new place isn't too far, I suggested we move there, allowing my mother-in-law to stay in the current apartment. Surprisingly, my husband agreed to the move. After informing Mary, we decided to make the move a week later. Honestly, I anticipated some opposition from her, but she accepted our decision with a big smile. Goodbye, John and Emily. I'm so sorry for the sudden decision to move. Don't worry about it. It's wonderful that your father gave you the house. He's very sweet. Thank you. Please visit us sometime. Of course, it's not too far from here, and I hope you visit me regularly too. I will. After the conversation, I headed to our new home with my husband, feeling relieved that I wouldn't have to endure snide remarks anymore. I could now live freely at my own pace. Although I had initially feared Mary's opposition, consulting with John brought me peace. However, my peace did not last. Despite being able to keep my distance from my mother-in-law and reduce stress, my husband started coming home late. It wasn't just the late returns. There were days when he wouldn't come home at all. He defended his actions, saying he was worried about his mother, but it became too frequent. Without informing me, he went to her house, had dinner with her, and sometimes stayed overnight, disrupting my daily life. This can't go on, I thought one day. I sat him down for a talk. John, you've been coming home really late lately, and sometimes you don't even come home at all. Is that so? I'm just worried about my mother. That's not the point. At least let me know beforehand that you'll be late, so I'll know I don't have to prepare dinner. Since you're a housewife and always at home, you can eat the leftovers for lunch the next day, right? So you're saying I should just accept everything quietly because I'm a housewife? Are you saying we shouldn't talk about this? Isn't that the truth? Housewives just relax at home. What? What are you saying? Anyway, I'm worried about leaving my mother alone. Ellie will be coming back soon, and I need to discuss some things with her. Wait, Ellie is coming back. What does he need to discuss with her? Curious, I asked my husband. We're moving Ellie here to live with us. Live together? Yes, she kept saying she wanted a big house like the one she lived abroad. That's why I thought of letting her stay in this house. What? I don't understand. Suddenly informed of this, I couldn't think of anything. Is my sister-in-law going to live in this house? I had barely escaped from Mary's constant complaints, and now his sister, Ellie, was going to live in this house. I couldn't wrap my head around it. This was the house I inherited from my father. It felt unnatural. It's the only big house that would satisfy Ellie, my husband argued. The apartment where we used to live is now where my mother stays, and it's too small for 4 people. But I never intended to live with Ellie. I don't plan to live together either. I intend to give this house to Ellie, my husband declared. What? Why? Because we plan to move back with my mother. Ellie can use this house freely, he explained. I was taken aback by my husband's unreasonable proposal and felt like fainting. Despite my repeated insistence that I had no intention of living with my mother-in-law, my husband eventually became furious. Can't you be a little more considerate? You can live because of me, so just do as I say. Enough is enough of your jokes. This house is precious to me, inherited from my father. Why should I give it to Ellie? Such a wonderful house is wasted on you, isn't it? I've already told Ellie that I've got her a large house. It's too late to say otherwise now. I wasn't consulted in any of this decision. Either way, I can't accept it. You're always complaining. Enough. Calm down and think. I'll go back to my mother's for a while. My husband angrily slammed the door and left. Left alone in the room, tears streamed down my face. I couldn't understand why my husband decided everything on his own. It's unimaginable that he intends to give away the house I inherited from my father to my sister-in-law. Every day, my husband sent me messages asking if I had calmed down and to come back soon. Each time, I had to firmly tell him that I had no intention of agreeing. Then, one day, he said something shocking over the phone. Hey, Emily, when will you come here and live with me? Stop nagging. I've said it so many times. I have no intention of living with Mary. Moving there and giving this house to Ellie. I've already told Ellie. Stop being selfish. She might be coming back this week, so there's no time. Why should I give up my house for your family? I inherited this house from my father. Don't decide on your own. Who do you think you're talking to? Even my mother is furious. I'm at my wit's end. That's not my problem. You're ignoring my feelings, I responded. My husband let out a big sigh over the phone, clearly frustrated. Then he said something shocking. If you can't listen to me, then let's divorce. Hand over the house to Ellie. Leave by tomorrow. At that moment, my love for my husband quickly faded. Threatening me with the word divorce was utterly despicable. I couldn't possibly forgive him for using divorce as a threat without considering someone's feelings. I couldn't allow these people to have their way. Burning with anger, My husband continued to speak with a triumphant and dominating tone. Listen, if you don't leave by tomorrow, I'll really divorce you. That it? Wait, are you serious? Of course I am. You don't have a choice. What will you do if you, a housewife, get divorced? You can't survive. Enough, I get it. Good. Hurry up and move over here. My mother is looking forward to disciplining you. He hung up the phone with a confident tone, thinking I would do as he said. After that call, I made up my mind and decided to seek help from my father for a plan. The next day, everything was ready for the move. I replied calmly when asked, "By the way, I'm curious about when Ellie will be back." "She'll be back tomorrow." "Why are you so obsessed with Ellie?" "Between you and me, she seems to have made a lot from stock investments." "I see. So if you provide her with a house, maybe you can ask for financial help." "That's so like you. Anyway, you need to leave that house by today. It's inconvenient for all of us." "Don't worry. I've already moved." "What? What do you mean?" My husband seemed genuinely surprised. "I knew it. You don't want to divorce me, do you?" "Naturally. Without an income, you can't survive. But all of this is coming to an end. We're still married now, so that's why we're talking." "Wait, what? I can only think about divorce now." My husband was clearly shaken by my words. "You promised to move out of that house, right, and live with me. But you've already moved? What are you saying? Of course, I won't live in a house with a husband who decides everything on his own and a bullying mother-in-law." "Why are you including me? You promised to move out for Ellie." "I said I've already moved, didn't I?" "I did as you said. Enough with the jokes." "Where are you now?" My husband's tone was panicky, and he was clearly losing his cool. "Actually, I'm at my parents' house." "Why?" "I moved to my parents' rural home. I don't plan on returning to where you guys are." "You should have told me that sooner." My husband replied with a hint of relief in his voice. "If I could just give that house to Ellie, it doesn't matter where you live. It would require $3,300,000. $3,300,000. I put the house I inherited from my father up for sale. And if you truly want to give it to Ellie, buy it for $3,300 and then hand it over." "Are you joking?" "I'm serious. The house was still in my father's name, so I asked him to sell it. In reality, what I asked my father for was to sell the house. My father had always said, 'If something happens, contact me. You can live or sell this house as you like. I'll help you.' As a result of the valuation, a price of $3,300,000 was proposed, which I gladly agreed to and put the house on the market immediately." My husband probably never saw this coming. He spat out insults, consumed with anger. "Why are you doing this without asking me? This is unforgivable." "I'm not asking for, nor do I need your approval. We're getting divorced soon anyway. I don't care. Do you understand your position? You'll be the one in trouble if we divorce. Since you don't have an income, you're just a housewife. I'd rather struggle on my own than be with you forever. Listen, Ellie will be coming back soon. I told you I'm relying on Ellie's money, didn't I? So what? Like I said, if you want to let dear Ellie live in that house, just buy it for $3,300,000. That is if you can." "What? That's impossible." "If Ellie has made a lot of money from her investments, I don't see why she can't afford it." "I don't know how much she made, but that's too much. She can never afford it." My husband was all excuses with no hint of an apology, maintaining his domineering attitude. I felt it was foolish to spend any more time on him and unleashed everything I wanted to say. "I'm done with you and this ridiculous mess. Did you think threatening divorce would make me give up the house? If you thought being a housewife meant I'd do whatever you say, you're so wrong. Hey, let's calm down and talk." "I am calm. Isn't it you who's panicking? I won't be controlled by you or your family anymore. Stay out of my life. Go to hell with your beloved mother, you mama's boy." I shouted loudly enough for the whole neighborhood to hear, then abruptly hung up the phone. Of course, I'd had enough of these insane calls from my husband, so I blocked his number. I immediately consulted my lawyer and decided to request a divorce. It took some time, but the divorce was finalized, recognizing my husband's fault. He and Mary still live in that apartment. As for Ellie, they couldn't provide the large house she wanted, and she was furious, claiming this wasn't the deal, and made a U-turn back overseas. My ex-husband's plan to seek financial assistance from his successful sister fell through. And now he seems to be struggling financially, having to pay me alimony and support his mother. As long as he continues to live with such a selfish mother, his life will never be prosperous. On the other hand, I've moved to the countryside and am enjoying peaceful days with my parents. I recently started a clerical job at a small company introduced by a neighbor. With that salary, I can live comfortably. I plan to live here for a while. I want to be by my parents' side as much as possible to repay the kindness they show me. Call an ambulance. Hurry up, my husband, who always rubbed me the wrong way, collapsed on the floor in a greasy sweat. The paramedics arrived immediately. They quickly checked my husband's condition and put him on the stretcher. Then they said to me, "Are you his wife, aren't you? Could you come with us to the hospital?" My husband was placed on the stretcher, and he looked at me with pleading eyes. I met his gaze squarely. "No, I will not," I said firmly, with no hesitation. "What?" My husband's voice came out as if he had lost his mind. "This man is a stranger, so I am not coming. Please take care of the rest." "Wait, Lydia, what?" "Wait." I then confronted my husband with something I had been carrying in my pocket for the past few days. The moment he saw it, his face turned even paler. "How dare you treat me like a slave all these years? This is my revenge. I will never forgive you. My name is Lydia. I'm a 36-year-old housewife living in a rented apartment with my husband, Caleb. I was introduced to Caleb by a colleague at work when I was still employed full-time. Despite being more of an introvert, I occasionally attended parties, invited by my colleague who had many friends. One day, I reluctantly agreed to join a barbecue with his friends. There, I met Caleb. Surprisingly, we connected instantly despite my initial reservations. Caleb, the outdoorsy type, turned out to be sociable and humorous. We exchanged contact information, went out for dinner and shopping, and eventually started dating. After several years of dating, Caleb proposed, and we got married. Caleb had always been kind, taking me out of my indoor lifestyle. However, over the past few years, he started to do and say things that made me feel a little uncomfortable. I quit my job and became a housewife because Caleb himself wanted me to. However, he often made sarcastic remarks about it. For example, when I got sick and was late cooking dinner, he would say, "Lydia, why isn't my dinner ready yet?" "Hi, sorry, I was sick today. I had a rest earlier, and I couldn't get up. Can you go take a bath first?" He would reply, "Huh, what's that? You're a housewife. You should at least take care of the meal." Caleb never seemed to worry about my health, which made me very sad. Another time, I mentioned a reunion in my hometown, saying, "Hey, Caleb, there's a reunion coming up in my hometown. I'll finish my chores, so can I go?" He would simply respond with, "Suit yourself." Well, being a stay-at-home wife is great, you know. I envy you, Lydia. You get to play around with the money your husband makes. Although Caleb was usually really nice to me, carrying my purse and bringing me flowers after work, there were times when he acted like a jerk. I even thought maybe he wanted me to work, so I suggested taking a part-time job. However, Caleb insisted that was not the case, and in the end, I remained a full-time housewife. One day, one of Caleb's relatives called me out of the blue. I picked up the phone feeling a little defensive. The relative on the other end of the line called my name in a panic, "Lydia. Caleb's mother has collapsed." I froze at the unexpected words. According to my relative, she had gone to visit my mother-in-law a few hours earlier and found her lying in the yard. An ambulance had rushed to the scene and taken my mother-in-law to a general hospital. In a panic, I ran out of the house and arrived at the hospital. I was told that her condition was still unpredictable. As we discussed this, Caleb came running in out of breath. We moved to the hospital room to check on my mother-in-law, who was sleeping in bed. Her body was covered with various tubes, and it was painful to watch. "Mom," my husband called out to her, but she did not respond. Caleb stayed in the hospital room for the rest of the day, and I decided to go home to gather everything needed for the hospital stay. After a while, my mother-in-law recovered enough to sit up by herself. However, it was difficult to do anything without someone's help. I was glad she could get up, wondering if she would be able to walk again with continued physical therapy. As her discharge date approached next week, I said this to Caleb, and then he started to say something I didn't understand. "Oh yeah, are you ready? We'll be leaving this house next week, so you'd better start packing our stuff." I couldn't comprehend what he meant. Caleb seemed annoyed, as if he didn't like my reaction. "We don't need this house since we are going to live with my mom at my parents' house. You are still as dense as ever, aren't you? Does that mean I'm going to live with my mother-in-law after she gets out of the hospital? I never heard anything about that. Did you decide to move in together without talking to me? Have you already canceled the lease on this house?" When I said that, my husband became even more grumpy. "Of course, I've already canceled the lease. It's the right thing for us to do as a family, to live together and help her. Don't tell me you don't want to live with her, do you? I'm the one who makes a living, so I won't accept any complaints," he said, and went back to his room with deliberate footsteps. I never thought that Caleb would take such a hardline approach. I can't believe he's canceling the lease on this apartment. I have no choice but to move out. I know he is worried about his mother, but this is too much. I sighed deeply. A few days passed, and suddenly I was living with my mother-in-law. I had never been a caregiver before, so everything was new to me. I had to spend most of my day feeding, bathing, and toileting for my mother-in-law. She didn't want me to take care of her, and she hardly communicated with me. Furthermore, when I tried to talk to her, she would hide in bed, saying she was in pain. When my mother-in-law was healthy, we didn't have a bad relationship. In fact, we sometimes exchanged delicious-looking snacks we found at the department store. Perhaps she was too frail to care for others. On the other hand, my husband Caleb, who had forced us to move in together, rarely came home. After work, he would go out for drinks and come home in the morning. Even on his days off, he would find some reason to go out. When he came home, all he did was play video games in his room. I decided to talk to Caleb while he was playing games. "I know you can't avoid working overtime or drinking with your colleagues, but can't you at least help me take care of your mother when you're at home? Or I would like you to help me with the housework." I said this, and Caleb replied without looking away from the screen. "What are you being so naive about? Housework and caregiving are both your jobs. I'm tired from working, you know." "Oh, I'm almost out of coffee. Go make me some and clean this room, okay? And oh, take these to the dry cleaner. I need them by Wednesday." My husband spoke one-sidedly and threw his work clothes at me. This time I was annoyed and retorted, "That's enough. I've been doing housework and taking care of your mother every day for the past month without a break. Why can't you at least help me a little?" Caleb then slammed the game controller down on the desk, stood up with a mighty thud, and said, "How dare you talk to me like that? Who do you think you owe your livelihood to? If you have a problem with me, then get out. Come on, get yourself together and get out." Well, I feel sorry for my mom. She's going to be left alone without anyone to take care of her. That being said, I couldn't say a word. It's true. I only have a little money saved up, and I can't leave my mother-in-law, who can't do anything for herself. Holding back my emotions, I picked up his suit and left the room. After about 6 months of such a difficult life, my mother-in-law suddenly passed away. I woke up in the morning and went to check on her like I always do. But that day, she was no longer breathing. I called an ambulance and took her to the hospital, but it was too late. Caleb was in tears and sad. I don't know why, but I couldn't cry. I felt cold when I saw Caleb crying. Without hesitation, I thought to myself, "You didn't do anything to help her." When I realized that I don't have to take care of her anymore, I felt a sense of relief. I felt guilty for feeling that way. Time passed so quickly. After the funeral, I suddenly realized that 2 weeks had passed since my mother-in-law was gone. It was time to organize her belongings. After my husband left for work, I started cleaning my mother-in-law's room. I put her favorite clothes and accessories into cardboard boxes one after another. But there weren't many, so the work was over soon. Next, I opened the cabinet by my mother-in-law's bedside. There was almost nothing in it, but there was a big can on the bottom shelf. I thought I had seen it somewhere before, and it was a can of assorted sweets I had given her when she was still in good health. I wondered why it was there. I'd opened the lid of the can, and there was a letter inside. When I picked up the envelope, I found the words "Dear Lydia" on it. I hurriedly opened it and looked inside. In trembling letters, there was a message for me. "Lydia, I am sorry for making you take care of me. I was ashamed of myself for forcing you to work for me every day. I was also ashamed of my son, Caleb. I know how bad he was to you, Lydia. You should leave him and live your life the way you want." My mother-in-law knew everything. She knew that her son was being selfish, and that I was suffering from it. At the end of the letter, she wrote, "I am glad that I was able to spend the last days of my life with you, Lydia. Thank you." At that moment, I cried for the first time since my mother-in-law passed away. It was as if everything I had been holding back was flowing out of me. I cried and cried until my tears ran dry. And then I made up my mind. I would divorce my husband. 10 days have passed since I found the letter from my mother-in-law. My husband is still treating me like a slave. "Lydia, I'm missing one of my socks. Where is it?" "Oh, and take my car to the car wash today. You've got nothing to do, right?" "He's going out with his colleagues for golfing today." I guess he's completely forgotten about it, but today is our wedding anniversary. Well, I don't even care about it anymore. What are you going to do while I'm golfing? You can't just sit around, you know. You have to prepare dinner, clean my room, clean the bathroom. You have a lot to do. His arrogance left me speechless. "Hey, can you hear me? Bring me my sock and a jacket. Hurry up, or I'll be late." At that moment, Caleb fell to the floor, clutching his stomach. He was in pain and sweating. He told me to call an ambulance, as if he was trying to squeeze out the worst. I froze at the sadness of the situation, and my husband yelled at me, "Hurry up, you're really useless. Can't you even call an ambulance?" Hearing these words, I became strangely calm. Then I called 911, and within minutes, an ambulance arrived with paramedics. The paramedics quickly assessed Caleb's condition and placed him on a stretcher. As they put him on the stretcher, they said to me, "You're his wife, aren't you? Would you come with us to the hospital?" Caleb looked at me with pleading eyes as he was placed on the stretcher. I looked him right in the eye and said, "No, I will not." I said that firmly, with no hesitation. Caleb's voice came out as if he had lost his mind. "This man is a stranger, so I am not coming. Please take care of the rest." Then I confronted Caleb with something I had been carrying in my pocket for the past few days. The divorce papers that I was forced to sign when we had a fight a while ago. My husband had always told me that if I disobeyed him, he would serve me with the divorce papers. Caleb tried to snatch the divorce papers from me, but he couldn't seem to move due to the pain, so he had to lean back on the stretcher without any efforts. "Excuse me, but please leave now," I said. As I said this, the paramedics finally took my husband away in the ambulance. He must have looked like a poor husband whose wife had given him a divorce. He should be embarrassed. I watched the ambulance leave and then left the house. It took a long time, but the divorce papers were accepted, and the divorce was officially finalized. While Caleb was in the hospital for a week, I was busy packing my belongings and sending them to my parents' house. Then one day, I ran into Caleb when I was at the grocery store. "Lydia, please don't do this to me. You love me, don't you? Please don't leave me. I admit I've made some mistakes. You listened to me no matter what I said, so I just got carried away," he pleaded. The overbearing attitude he had a few months ago was gone, and he looked completely pathetic. What are you talking about? The divorce is already finalized. It's too late for you to act so fragile. Go ahead, live your life as you please. He didn't really think that I was going to divorce him, and he looked quite shocked. His hands were shaking, and his face was turning pale. Well, that's that then. Bye. It had been 6 months since Caleb and I had divorced. Caleb had once visited my parents' house, ringing the intercom and calling out my name so loudly that I had no choice but to see him. Sure enough, he wanted me to get back together with him. When I kept quiet, he began to reveal his current lifestyle to me. He can't cook because he forced me to do all the housework. He eats only TV dinners or eats out. And he has gained 10 pounds since the divorce. It's true that he put on a lot of fat on his face and stomach, noticeable at a glance. Additionally, he doesn't seem to understand how to do laundry. The shirts he wears are wrinkled and smell weird, making him look even filthier. I finally realized how great you have done, Lydia. If I don't do something, the people at the company won't like me, Caleb said, sobbing cheap tears. In other words, he wants to treat me like a servant again. There's no way I'm going back to that. No, never. If you make any more noise, I'll call the police, I warned him, treating him like a stranger. Caleb started to be afraid of the word police and left the house crying. I'm sure he wouldn't get involved anymore. I hope so. My ex-husband seemed to be leading a very inconvenient life. On the other hand, I was leading a fairly comfortable life. For a while, I stayed at my parents' house, but now I have a small apartment and live alone. My standard of living is much lower than when I lived with my ex-husband, but I still like this life where I can have my own time. I thought it would be difficult to get another job at my age, but a friend of mine happened to have a connection with someone who retired, and I was able to get a job to take her place. I feel so happy to be able to spend time and money only on myself without anyone telling me what to do. From now on, I want to take care of myself at my own pace.